Hey guys, we want to thank Cap City Tees for sponsoring today's episode. That's right, Cap City Tees, the #1 printing company in Sacramento. Well, at least in our hearts. Cap City Tees is an amazing company putting out amazing quality at, most importantly, amazing prices. They are in line with any major retailer out there. Now, if you're in need of getting a shirt screen printed or embroidered, whether that's your local soccer team or basketball team or volleyball team or all the way up to corporate clothing, Cap City Tees is the place to go. So if you're in need or if you're in want, reach out to Cap City Tees at capcitytees.com or capcitytees@gmail.com. That's capcitytees@gmail.com. Welcome to the Hard Money Show, where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. It is a good day when we can get Melissa back on the line. If you guys don't remember, Melissa was on the podcast before. Her and her husband, we talked some real estate, we talked some wholesaling, we talked some flipping, but today we are talking about photography and videography. So I'm really excited to have you on because I think that this is a really very can be very difficult for a lot of people coming into this industry. And I guess any industry where you're kind of starting your own business.
Oh yeah. I'm super excited. Yeah.
So I want to ask, how did you get into photography?
So it started out as something that I've always been very interested in. I'm a creative person. I like creating things and art. And so what happened was I started, seeing, it was kind of like when Instagram kind of started popping up and you can actually see people's work and everything. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, I wish I could do that. So I've always had a passion for it. And then once I started having kids, I was like, I can do this. So I kind of started using them as my models. My oldest now is 8. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've been doing it for a while and I love it.
So I got into social media really late.
Really?
So I did not. So one of my girlfriends made me a MySpace account, and I probably before I graduated, I probably went on it twice.
Oh my gosh! From college?
And yeah, and then I got into college, and everybody was on Facebook.
Right.
And so I got into Facebook, and I probably didn't really start using Facebook until I think I was just kind of taking photos and putting stuff up, but I didn't really start using it until 2000 and let's say maybe 10, somewhere around there. And I went into college in 2007. So there's definitely stuff up there, but I think I was mostly just using it for a little bit of communication. And then mostly just putting photos up that I was taking with friends in college, right?
Right. Yeah, the fun times.
And I remember distinctly Facebook and then Instagram was coming out. And I remember thinking, this is stupid. I'm like, this is such a waste of time. I don't know why people would spend all of their time on here. Mm-hmm. And I said that with Facebook. I said that with Instagram. I said that with Twitter. Mm-hmm. I said that with TikTok. I've always been a very I just don't. Here's the thing. I like social media, right? I spend quite a bit of time on it because I built a profession around it.
Right.
But if I didn't have a profession around it, I probably wouldn't be on it very much. Just because there's a lot of stuff that goes into it where I'm like, man, this is pretty tedious, right? To always kind of have this in your face.
Yes.
So, but the thing is I always thought that they were dumb, but then I was like, oh, everybody's going on there. Oh, people are building businesses on these things. Oh, people. And then I started to pay attention to them less as a social interacting platforms, but more of how do we build a landscape around this that can help people be successful as independent brands or businesses, especially at the time I was working in nonprofits. How do we help nonprofits be more visible to the community, right?
Yeah. Huge for that.
Yeah, that's how I kind of got into that. Obviously I have a communication background and then a PR background. education wise. And then I, took a lot of photos and things like that. But it's funny, just like that whole thing with social media, I was really not a huge proponent of it. And it's funny now because if you watch stuff on TikTok is like at the forefront of things right now, right?
Oh, yeah.
And TikTok comes out of China, and people, you'll see the like developers, or you'll see like the owners, or you'll see people that are high up at TikTok talking about how they have special filtration systems built in for their citizens that are different than our citizens.
Wow.
And that they have parental guidelines that are innately built into the program for their kids, but our parents have to go searching through the platform to set those parental guidelines up.
For sure, yeah.
And so it's stuff like that where I kind of feel like, yes, and it's interesting because ever since I kind of went to grad school and I learned what PR was, and I learned what marketing is, and I learned what like framing is, which is essentially creating a picture of the story you want told in a way that people will see it the exact way you want them to see it. Right? And so you might have seen like a photo of there's this one of Prince Harry, I think, and it looks like he's flipping somebody off. But then you look at a different photo of him and he's not flipping them off, right? He's just like holding his hand up. Yeah. And so that's exactly what framing is, right? And that's why if you watch the same exact story, a news story that's happening, and you watch it on the BBC, you watch it on like let's say a Democratic kind of left news station, and then a Republican right news station, you'll get varying stories, right? I mean, they'll be generally the same, but you'll notice they are different, right?
Right. That's one of our favorite pastimes. Sometimes when crazy things are happening, we'll go to both and watch, and we're like, whoa.
Yeah, it's
all the way finished.
Yeah. And so that's the interesting thing about this profession is just like I have like a very huge level of empathy and sympathy for people, and I don't like to cheat people. I don't like to like break the law really and stuff like that. And so when I kind of learned these sort of tactics that are used, I kind of thought, well, this seems a lot like lying, right? Because it's not the exact story, it's what we want them to know. So I've always had this kind of hate-love relationship with what I do. And that's why I always try to come at it with like the most sincerity to try to help people be successful in this and try to give their authentic selves up there. And luckily that narrative has been really pioneered over the last, let's say like 8 years, especially by my favorite person, Gary Vee, in this media space, that authenticity and things like that. And so, I just want everybody to kind of understand that if you don't love social media, I get it, right? I don't always love social media. Or if you don't love brand development, or you don't love the news, you don't love marketing or all advertising, all stuff, I get it, right? I'm right there with you. But on the other side, right, I want everybody to have a successful business venture. I want everybody, if you want to create a brand, do that. Or if you want to use social media as a way to connect with friends and family, I think there's a good way to do that as well. So that's kind of where I stand with it. But
I think
go ahead.
Good. I think it's super good to like make that distinction, right? You can be the consumer, or you can use it as the vehicle. So, if you have a business, and I think like for myself, and along with other photographers whose maybe, small business it's hugely important for me to go on my social media and present, my work, right? Because when people are looking to book me, they want to see what I've done, right? But if I was a person that didn't like to consume the social media, then I wouldn't, maybe post as often, or I would post maybe for my business, but not consume it and watch the videos and do all that. So I think it's if you're not that type of person, then just try to avoid consuming it, but don't avoid it, because that's what's going to push your business farther. It's going to get you the farthest reach. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So the way that I got, like I said, didn't have like a very good introduction into the social media space, but the way I got introduced to videography and photography was when I was in college. I was in a lot of organizations, and I just wanted to kind of capture memories from when I was there. And so I typically was like the photographer, the go-to photographer. So it's funny, I had a lot of photos going through college, but I was into very few of
Few
them.
of them. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was always taking the photos, and I kind of wish, man, I wish I would have spent a little more time in front of the camera and had some photos of me like that I can remember what was going on. But
Right.
yeah, I took all these photos, and so that was kind of my introduction, right? It was nothing crazy. We had a camera, and I want to say it was like a Canon, right? This was 2007, 8, 9, 10. So just like a basic Canon camera, and whatever else somebody else would bring, I would just like, yeah, I'll take all the photos, don't worry about it. And then I took a graphic design class and as well in college, and I was kind of like, okay, like I want, because at the time I was using Apple, and so you had the kind of makeshift products that they had to try to help you like edit a video or whatever, and it was almost like a slideshow, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of like the extent of it. And so I took graphic design, and that was really fun. And I kind of just did all of that through college, and I just continue to take those skill sets, and I enjoy doing it, right? And it just so happened that I continued to be involved in organizations that needed that sort of service. So that's kind of how I built it. But as I want to move into that eventually, but I want to talk about a little bit more about you. So you kind of decide like, okay, I'm going to get into photography. And what are you like? How did you start? What did you shoot on? I don't know if you remember, but what did you shoot on? Like, what kind of gear did you get? Because I think this is a big thing for people, is they're very apprehensive to get into taking photos and putting themselves, unless you're really really photogenic, which I don't think is a lot of people. I think it's a small group.
Yeah.
They're really like, think the idea is like, oh, I have to have the best gear, I have to have all this stuff, right? It's gear chasing. And now iPhones are so good, like Samsungs are so good, you can do a lot mostly on that. And I'm actually seeing influencers and like YouTubers
Yeah.
who, instead of buying like these, gigantic $10,000 cameras, they're just buying brand new iPhones,
Yep.
and they're just recording on their iPhones
Yeah.
and using up all that storage, and then they're just keeping all those iPhones. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. I've noticed that too. And it works for what they do. Right.
Mhm.
And I think that's really cool because it gives people that are afraid to make a bigger investment into something before they're sometimes people have like these ideas of what they want to do, but they're not 100% sure.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of money. So yeah, the iPhones have come a long way. Same thing. And there's differences between like if you have a Galaxy or Samsung
Mhm.
versus the iPhone. They both are doing really cool things and like really like detailed and like the bokeh in the background. Sometimes for my personal preference,
Mhm.
a little much. It looks a little fake, but no, you can do some crazy things with cell phones now. So I think
Mhm.
that's a nice choice
Yeah,
for.
the AI behind the, right. I mean, it's not like they have the best lenses on there,
Oh yeah.
but the AI that they're building into it, that's the back end systems, are what are doing such a great job. Now, there's a lot of back and forth on if they're capturing true color of people correctly and
Yeah.
environments
Yeah.
correctly. And even I was just spending some time with one of my friends. I have the iPhone 14, or yeah, 14 Pro Max or whatever, like, and he has the same thing but a generation above, so the 15. And I might be getting that wrong, 13 to 14 or something, but the point is his was above mine, right?
Right.
But my camera was taking better photos than him. And I was like, oh, that's really odd. I don't know why it's doing that. And then I remembered that when I got my phone, I watched a bunch of YouTube tutorials on the settings on my phone to get the best photos. And then I remember, oh, yeah, sorry, I went and changed all the settings in my phone so it'll capture, photos more to the way that I like to see them.
Right.
Yeah. So it's
I
crazy.
think that's also a kind of an interesting point too, because so aside from it capturing, there's also different settings. Like even if I took the photo on my camera, right, and
Mhm.
then and I uploaded it to Instagram or whatever, you're gonna see a different color on whatever device you're using
Mhm.
than what I took and
Yeah.
what I have like to a gallery. I post to your gallery too. So yeah, I mean, it's really interesting how you could play around with the settings, and it
Mhm.
definitely affects tones and skin tones and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, it's funny because I think that's becoming like a bigger problem for people in general because they're
Yeah.
taking more photos with their phones.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you've dealt with this as a person who's been in this sort of industry for a really long time. This isn't a unique issue. This has been a problem with monitors for a really
Yes.
long time
Mhm.
because there's high-end monitors you can get that are true colors to what you should what you actually captured to what the color should actually look like. But the problem with that is that not everybody, I mean, almost nobody has high-end monitors, right?
Right.
And so you're making this content, you're like, oh, this looks amazing. And then you're giving it to somebody else, and their computer monitor is darker, their color balances are different. And they're like,
Mhm.
oh, I don't really know. And I'm like, well, it looks good on my end, right? So this has been a problem we've been dealing with for a long time.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So what did you first kind of invest in when you got into photography? And when was it? Do you remember around what year you started
Yeah.
looking
So
into it?
I would say my first like real camera that I got, actually my husband bought for me, Julian. It was a Nikon, and it was a Nikon. We actually just barely sold it like to another hobbyist
Mhm.
last year, but I got that in 2015,
Okay.
15-ish,
Hmm.
2014. I don't know. Around there, a while ago.
Sometime around there.
Yeah, it was a long
Yeah.
time ago. So he got me the D750, I want to say.
Okay.
Whatever the base model was around that
Mhm.
time is what I had. And there was one model right above it that did a lot more. So
Right.
I found myself getting stuck with certain things, settings and stuff that I wanted, which eventually, once I understood the camera and the brand, I decided to move on. And that's ultimately why I did that. But the biggest thing about that camera, and I'll say this for anybody that wants to, I don't know, start their own photography business or just kind of start dabbling in it, is it's not about the camera.
Mhm.
It's for me, and it's about the lens. Yes, you need to have certain capabilities, but in that long time frame that I had that basic base model, I
Mhm.
was practicing working on, the triangle. So your ISO, your aperture, your all of that stuff, your shutter speed.
Mhm.
It's really important to just get down those basics, and then you can move on to doing all the fancy stuff and spend your money on lenses. Lenses
Mhm.
are like the most pivotal thing that's going to make your images stand out, make them the way that you want them. So I started with a Nikon. I moved to Canon. I like the colors better. It's richer for me. It's user friendly, way more
Mhm.
user friendly. And so, yeah, I started with Nikon and I went to Canon.
How long were you running Nikon until you switched over to Canon?
A long time. I would say like 5 years, 4 or 5 years.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
I've only ran Sony. I mean, I don't really count the photos I was taking when I was kind of like in college or a little bit younger because I was using other people's cameras. They weren't mine. They were like part of the clubs or whoever's.
Right.
And I didn't I I would mess with a little bit of settings here and there, but ultimately it's like once you're in the same place and you're like, okay, this looks fine. I just take camera photos, right? And it's like how good of a quality does a photo need to be of a basketball
Right.
game or a party that we're having? It's like as long as it looked good enough, people are fine with it, right?
Right.
So my first camera that I ran was I've always ran Sony, and I think the first one I got was A6500, and I bought a kit, right? So I bought it was something at Best Buy, I think. So I bought that. I bought a kit lens. It came with a bag, came with some extra batteries, and that's what I started out with, and it did relatively well because I think the kit lens was like a mid-level lens, maybe like 35 to 70 or something like that, relatively
Pretty
good.
decent.
Huh?
Pretty decent.
Yeah, it was fine. It was
Yeah.
like it was a little more expensive. It wasn't the cheapest setup there at the
Okay.
time. It was a little bit, I wanted because I didn't know a lot about photography at the time or videography. I just know I wanted some range. And I was like, well, I want to be able to, and what I mean by that, I wanted to be able to zoom in and zoom out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, I know I need to be able to do that. And so that was the first camera that I really got into, but I was just helping somebody else on a project for the photography project. She's in 8th grade. And so their family was running Canon. And man, like there were some times where I had to sit down and be like, just give me like 5-10 minutes because I got to look through this camera and figure out where these settings are, because they're not the same. And I find that the way that Sony has their camera set up, for brand new people, it's easier to find stuff. They lay stuff out a little bit easier. Even with my experience now, I was still having a hard time finding stuff in their settings. And so that was really interesting. But I know Canon, people love shooting Canon, and and it's any system that you end up shooting, you spend enough time with it, you're gonna take good photos, right? I don't know if you want to do that, but you're 100% right, because I started out what I think the 60, maybe I started out the 6300, and I moved up to 6500. I moved up to the A7, then the A7 I, the A7 II. And that's where I kind of stopped, because there hasn't been, like, for me, the price point to what I'm gaining inside the camera hasn't been substantial enough for the type of work that I'm doing now. Right. I do a lot more still stuff, whether that's photos or video, where before was a lot more kind of running and gunning. And so you needed better in camera stabilization and better, better motion capture, stuff like that. And so, but yeah, so I've always run Sony, and I haven't really run any of the two that you ran. So that's really interesting. But the lenses, it really is, right? It's like, in that the hard part about photography is the lenses are expensive, right? The cameras are expensive, but if you really want to have like a full set of lenses, they say that you should try to get fixed lenses that don't have much range in them. So that means you don't want them to zoom in or zoom out too much. You want them to be kind of more stop, like it's this specific lens, because the quality for those, because they don't have as much internal mechanisms, they typically shoot better, right? Which means you have to buy 3 to 5 lenses typically. And if you're buying the best quality of those lenses, typically that's probably going to be $800 to $3,000 a lens, depending on what you're working for. What you're working for. So it can get really expensive, but that's why I really want to kind of like bring this to the forefront for people. And it's like, I have a cinema camera, right? The whole systems is a $5,000 system. And then I have an A7 II, and that camera, you could probably pick one now up used for like $600 to $800. Add another $500 or $300 to $500 on for a lens, and you're good to go. Or you could just use your phone, right? Use for everything anyway. Just upgrade to a better phone, right? And you're spending, let's say, another $200-$300 to get a better phone, but then you don't have to buy these other cameras, right? Right. And I think that's where the market is currently at right now. I have camera usage for different things, but really we're trying to bring this back to real estate, right? Because that's what this podcast is for. We want to talk a little bit about what you're doing, because you do mostly portraits, right? And I do mostly real estate photography and videography. So we're going to branch those together. But if we're talking about, if you're a brand new realtor, or you're a realtor who just doesn't have like a strong grasp, or really you don't want to waste your time learning this new skill set, get a DJI stabilizer, right? They have really good ones. You can get them for $200 to $350. You can throw your phone on there. They have built-in AI systems that will be compatible between the two, where you can say, I'm going to be shooting outside, put it in that mode, kind of like a camera, and it will design it for you, right? You don't have to worry about shaking. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And obviously we all know the photos are pretty good, right? So you can go high end, kind of like I did, but keep in mind, I don't know how long you've been doing this, but I built everything I've had over 10-year span, buying gear and equipment and all these cameras and stuff. And so it can take a really long time unless you got stacks of money laying around.
Exactly. Yeah, it's over time. You can't just, it's end use, right?
Mm-hmm.
end use.
exactly. There's a I like the new cinema cameras that are coming out for Sony.
Mhm.
I have a Blackmagic cinema camera, but it's an older one and it's a little more heavy. And so I don't really run Blackmagic in general, right? I use their switcher, but that's it. So I kind of would like to get a Sony cinema camera, but the body, just the body, no lens, no anything else with it, is $6,000.
Yeah. See, again, that's super cool, but like end use, right? If you're a new realtor and you're like, oh, I want to offer my clients, like, I'll take their photos, so maybe they'll choose me, like, pop out your iPhone,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Get
Yeah,
the
and for
accessories.
most things you can. When I got into real estate even 3, 4 years ago, taking photos on your phone was crap. Like if you did that, you did not. And part of it was that people didn't mess with their settings at all. So it wasn't like you weren't even trying to take good photos, right? But now you can take pretty good photos. Now, I'd recommend putting like a fisheye lens or like just a lens
There you
for,
go.
yeah,
Mhm.
for the angle when you're in properties, because you want a wide angle lens to
Right.
capture the whole room.
Mhm.
And you can't typically just do that with the lenses that are on your phone. So you can get like a little kit or whatever, but it's so much more accessible now, right? And if
Right.
you're a brand new realtor that's out there, or I keep saying brand new realtor, but I got to remember that like
It could be
most,
anyone. Yeah.
yeah, most realtors I think could use some help in this.
Yeah.
Um,
Based on the MLS, yes.
yes, exactly. When you're doing this, you really can capture some great stuff with just your phone. It doesn't need to be all this other stuff. And the funny thing is, I remember when I was running my A7 II, and then I was running it on one of the higher end gimbal systems from DJI,
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
and it would
Those
take
cool.
forever to balance it, right? Because you have to balance everything so it'll work correctly. I mean, it's really the
Right.
best way to think of it. So, and then you have to put a light on it, because the typically, like, you want to make sure if all the rooms are the same color, you want to put a light on it so you can adjust that. And it's just like was such a hassle to do that. And now I can pretty much get just as good video with that system, which was an 800, let's call it a $3,500 system, with my phone,
Yeah.
which I guess they're what, $1,200, $1,300.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do everything else on them as well, right?
Right. Exactly. Multiple uses.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like we're doing a commercial or an ad right now, or a podcast to buy Apple phones or
I
whatever.
know. We should get a cut out of it.
Yeah, exactly. But we're not, right? We're just trying to make
Right.
this as easy as possible for people. We want to continue to reinforce the idea that it is okay, right? If you are doing it with diligence and professionalism, and you're not putting bad stuff up, and you realize, like, make sure you're taking a look at everything you have. I would still recommend doing some backside editing on them, right? Get all the
Right.
colors
Right.
equal and things like that. But you can do a good job now. All these new cameras, and I only run Apple, so I can't speak to the
Same.
other sides. But I think that they also have really great cameras. I've heard that they have better cameras sometimes, so there should be really no excuse on that end. And we'll talk a little bit more about later if you do want to get nicer cameras and things like that and their usage. But for now, let's get back to, so you're running these cameras, and do you initially go into just portraits?
What do you mean?
Like where you got your, I know you were like
Oh,
taking
what
photos
did
and
I
stuff,
start
but
with something
yeah,
else?
yeah, what was the discipline that you were doing? Was it just like, I'm gonna take photos of everywhere we go and I just like that? Or when did
Oh,
you decide like you were gonna make money, and how was that portraits that you decided on?
oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I always wanted, like I said, I started with my kids. So
Mhm.
I have always loved this idea of like capturing memories. So for me, you know, taking photos in nature and stuff is cool. I'm just not as interested in it. So I feel like I don't put as much importance into it, and I haven't really crafted that as much. I
Mhm.
love taking photos of people. I
Mhm.
love capturing their expressions. I love families. I do couples, babies, mostly lifestyle. So
Mhm.
I just have always wanted to get into that. And so that's what I really focused on, was always people. So I would always just be like, hey, you're graduating. Can I take your pictures for you?
Mhm.
Like, you don't have to pay me, like, just let me, and I would practice. And so,
Mhm.
my young cousin, who's now big, I did his high school photos, and then he's in the army, and he
Mhm.
just came back on leave, and him and his girlfriend, oh, they're so sweet. So I ended up taking their couples photos again. So that's just, I've always been into portraiture, and I love that.
Yeah, I have never done photography for the love of photography. I think that's the best way to put it. I've always done it because of business, right?
Okay.
It always has circled around. Obviously the other one was like when I was in college, it was like, okay, I'm gonna capture photos because this is part of my duties as my job, right?
Right.
Of what I'm giving back to the organization that I'm in. And that sort of aspect of photography and stuff has always been there. But as I got older and I got more into business, and I started to, I graduated with my degree, and then I started getting another degree, and then I started doing consulting, and I started doing organizational development. It started to become part of my, they call your tool belt of
Yeah, yeah.
services that I provide to businesses to help them become more recognizable in their community. And so I've always looked at it from that space. I'm not that I don't enjoy it. It's a fun thing to do. I like editing and stuff like that. But I've never been like, oh, I really like taking portraits of families and things like that. It gives me the Phillies. And I kind of wish I did, because I do think that the things you do and that you're passionate about, you do really well. But I've always just attacked it from the business standpoint, and that's why, again, if you're not comfortable with photography, you're not comfortable with videography, you're not comfortable with being in front of the camera, that's okay. You don't have to be.
Right.
I was shooting, I was recording our promo, where we are now sponsored by Cap City Tees, and I was shooting another promo for them, or recording it, and I had to record it like 25 times, because there's just like, I want it to sound really well. I want it to sound professional and things like that. And I think a lot of people think that, because we use cameras all the time, or we're in front of it, it's like, okay, we just sit in front of it and one time and we're done. We just
Right.
set all the things and we take one photo and congratulations, there's your portrait. I
Right.
nailed it on the first one. And that's not the case,
Oh,
right?
no. No.
Most photographers, they take hundreds of photos, depending on if it could be in a
Yeah.
day, they could take thousands of photos, right? And so that's totally okay. So you're doing how, and so you do portrait photography like as a business now, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
how often is that kind of like coming up in your life?
I would say it's like it varies month to month. I'm just getting off of like the busy months.
Mm.
Fall, running into like the holiday season is always really hectic for me. And so I just finished delivering a gallery from fall.
Mm.
Luckily that one was a friend of mine, and there was a lot going on. So she's like, just do mine last. It's totally
Yeah,
fine.
oh, that's
Um,
nice.
yeah, she was like, just do mine last. Like, ours aren't for Christmas cards or anything. So I just ended up getting hers back, but it varies, throughout the year. It picks back up again. Graduation season
Mhm.
is really big. And then throughout the summer, it's I get sprinkles in here and there. Around January, February, it's kind of slow.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's just off and on. I'm not shooting full time or anything like that. It's mostly
Mm.
part time. But yeah, if anyone ever needs any photography services, they can go to my website, and I have a link up there, and they can book on their own.
So I always thought, like, I don't know if you do this, but I always thought, I know that people like to take photos with their families
Mhm.
in October around Halloween,
Yes.
and then in November for Thanksgiving, and then for Christmas. And I've never really seen, maybe I haven't paid attention to it, but like a fall package, like, hey, we'll do 3 sessions, right? October, November, December. And we'll do whatever themed. They're all themed, obviously, or
Right, right,
whatever.
right.
I don't know if that's too many photos for families or whatever, but seems like it would be a cool idea.
That is a cool idea. And that is so crazy. You just said that. It's like the world of, the way, I don't know, I forget how to say it, but
Mhm.
Julian and I were literally just talking about that because, like I said, around January, February, things die off. People just get done with the holidays. They're done with getting dressed up and doing all that spending money for right now, until the spring comes around. And he was talking about, yeah, like bundling a few of the different major events and, making it a bundle package.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm definitely exploring that because I haven't seen it very much either.
Yeah.
I've never seen that advertised as much.
Yeah, it seems like you could do fall, like the fall package, right? 3 sessions.
Yeah.
Or you could do a holiday package, which would be if you did like traditional holiday, like I don't want to say traditional, but if you did like, I guess, Christian holidays or whatever,
Yeah.
or and pagan holidays for
Yeah.
but if you did Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then Easter. And those would be the 4 major ones, right?
Right.
So I think that would be pretty cool to have something like that.
Package.
Yeah, some sort of package like that. I don't know what other. I'm sure there's like other holidays. You could just do like all the holidays, right? We just had MLK, so you could do an MLK one or whatever. So there's definitely some options there. And again, this is how I look at photography from a purely business standpoint.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Let's package this.
How can we package something and make it
right?
Because I do think that most people they like to take photos in October because it's cute, right? With the Halloween costumes. And then they might leave or take like Thanksgiving or leave or take Christmas. I think most of them, they kind of choose one of them and they make it their fall photo, right? So
that's pretty typical.
So I think it would be pretty, like you could lay it out where, you say, this is what the package is. This is what we typically recommend, right? We have costumes on this day. We have Thanksgiving theme on this day. We're going to do traditional Christmas on this day or whatever. And so that would be pretty fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. I think people with families would like totally eat that up too,
Yeah,
and not even just like with kids, but with their pets or whatever. They would love that.
Yeah. And then you could lock in, 3 months of business and get it all scheduled out. So, but talking about portraits, so one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is that a lot of people who are getting into the industry, or I mean, you should change your portrait, I would say probably like every 3 to 5 years. There's nothing worse than showing up and there's like 10-year-old portrait and you're like, oh, you don't look like what you look like in the photos. Not that should matter, right? Not
that it should matter. But speaking of that, I need to send you my new one from the last podcast that you advertised. I have one where I'm holding a camera, so I think that one's more legit.
Perfect. I'll let you send that one.
More update, but go on.
So there's different times when you're in real estate that you need, and even on the home loan side, less on that side, but more, more on the real estate side, that you need photography and videography in your life. One of the first things you're going to do is get business cards, or even if they're digital business cards or whatever it is. And typically it's in good practice to put a photo up with them. Now, I don't do that because I'm in a different role where I'm helping build an organization less than my personal brand, but I am doing a little bit more with my personal brand. So I will be getting, talking to you actually about headshots at some point. So, but this is the first thing. And so you like pass your exam and you're like, well, what do? I think I need business cards, or I think I need flyers or whatever. And yes, you do need those, and you need them to look good, right? And unless you're a photographer and you have the setup to do that, likely you need somebody else to do that. And that's why I thought you would be a good person, because that's really one of the first things that you need are portraits done, so you can advertise yourself in the industry. And we talk about building reaching out to your sphere of influence. And a lot of times people do that before they have this part set, and they reach out to them, but they don't have anything to send them, right? Nothing professional that's made up. And it has a stronger impact if you can do that, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so, but then the other thing is people wait too long as well. And it's like one of those balances where we're not giving enough information up front, and they think, oh, I passed my exam, now I can just do real estate. And I'm like, not really. We need to get some other things in place. So keep in mind, like you're going to need to do this stuff, and you're going to want to do it relatively quickly. You should have headshots set up. Like if once you pass, like in the next week or two, have those headshots set up. That way you can have them done. So whatever broker you're going with, let them know, hey, I'm gonna have new headshots coming in. Can we get this on my flyers? Can we get these on my business cards? Or however, it depends on your brokerage how that gets set up, but or you can use them for your own design. And then you can start reaching out to your sphere of influence to have a stronger impact and be like, hey, here's my business card, here's my flyer. If you have anybody, please send it along to them, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think that that's important because with, new agents, especially right after they, pass or they take their courses, they don't realize how much time sometimes things take to actually, get your certificate and, all the processing time. So that would be a great time to set something up and say at that point, all the fees and the money you pay towards everything, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So I would even suggest reaching out to a photographer, and it can't hurt just to ask and just say, I don't have I can't pay for a full session or whatever. How much would you charge just to do a headshot? Like just to do like a few headshots, because then you're lowering the cost or whatever. And then you're still getting a good photo of just a headshot. I would recommend they do a little bit of content as well, but hey, when money's short and you do what you got to do.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I say, hey, I need you, to measure 30 times and do one. So I need you to take one photo. I got $10. That's all I can give you. Please take the one best photo that you can. And then my eyes are closed and I can't afford it anymore. But yeah. And so even like myself, who's been in this part of the industry for 10 years or so, I won't take my own portraits, right? Because I don't feel, first off, it's a hassle to set up a system to where you can do like I'm not going to do a timer. I'm not going to do a timer. And so that means I have to like Bluetooth my phone and get the button set up and all this stuff. And then I'm going to be focusing on the button and not on looking, at the camera or whatever I need to do. It's a hassle, right? So it's one of those things, like, even if you're going to get into the industry, then I would recommend, for this initial thing, reaching out and having somebody else do it. I think it's a good thing to do. And then again, like having somebody take those like every couple of years for you, updated, maybe even every year, depending on what you're going to do. And keep in mind that like it doesn't hurt to have a series of photos for that. And so kind of outside of portraits, which I think are somewhat like portrait-esque that you probably do, is like when new realtors come to us and they need, a series of photos so they can advertise. I go, okay, well, let's take photos in front of the brokerage. We're going to take photos near the Capitol because, that's like
love that. Yeah,
standard placement. I had one where one of our realtors wanted to break into East Sacramento. And so I reached out to some friends who have property there. Hey, can we take some photos in front of your property? And so that's like the next kind of thing is like, yeah, you can take the portrait itself and then just have like put that out. If you're tight on money, that's the best thing to do. But if you can afford like a legit package, I would find key places in your community and be like, hey, how much is it going to cost to do like standard portraits? And then I want to do like a half day of shooting at these 3 locations.
For sure. Yeah. It's an investment.
Yeah. I don't want to ask you what you charge, but what's like standard industry for like somebody that's like maybe pretty good at their job? I know obviously we know that it can vary much higher. You have people that are brand new who are going to really undercharge the market, but what's kind of like a near standard rate that you would expect for just to do portraits and then to do like some sort of half day to hire you for a half day?
So a half day of shooting would be probably a pretty big difference between that and like a portrait session, because, just time wise. But I would say that you could probably find and I charge less than what most people do. So I would say like it's pretty normal to see like a normal portrait session for like, and I'm talking about an hour, and you'll probably get like around 30 plus images. You probably look to pay, it's about $350.
Okay.
About $350. And if you're looking at like a half day type thing, and not just because the number of hours, but because of the number of images per hour you're going to be shooting and editing. That could run you, a good, like probably $600-700. that's with a normal photographer. I mean, not normal, but maybe like a more upgraded, more expensive
Yeah.
photographer. Yeah, easy.
Yeah, so it's so interesting to talk to like someone like you because we do everything in house, and when we do it in house, it has to be below market because we're doing a service for our realtors, right?
Right.
And so it has to be like that, because it can get really expensive, as you
Yeah.
know. And so
Yeah.
sometimes, like, I know that people do not understand this. And I'll tell them, like, hey, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do these 3 different spots. We're going to do this. Like, it's going to be, I've done some for free because they're brand new and we need to get them going. Other people's, it's really minimum. And they're like, oh, well, can you do this? And can you do that? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, listen, like, go do this with somebody else and let them charge you $2,000. You do this with us, and we're gonna get what's necessary, right?
Exactly.
We're gonna do a good job, and we're gonna give you what's necessary. But you can't ask me to edit
Exactly.
your photo 10 times, right? Like, I'm gonna give you one, maybe two, if I'm feeling generous, and we're gonna get some quality stuff out there. And then if you want to go to outside of our brokerage, then go pay some money, right? And get it done the way you want it to get done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Hmm.
so, yeah, and so it can really add up. And we talk about this as well for we do an in-house, we have an in-house media team. So our in-house media, like, let's say if you want as your listing, and we're going to kind of move away from portraits because there's other aspects of real estate. So if we're talking about listings, right, and you're going to list list a property for your client, you need to have photos on the interior, you need to have photos on the exterior. You should have a walkthrough of that property. You should have a 360 walkthrough of that property, which is a different camera. And then you should have, if you can get drone footage, you should get drone footage. And then all of that stuff needs to be captured and needs to be edited and needs to be put out. So we do all of that except for the drone footage right now. We did do the drone footage, but I need to get licensed for it because of how stringent the laws have gotten
Yeah.
around that.
Yeah. They're changing.
Yeah. And so, but either way, right? So, and then we capture all of that, we edit that stuff, we get the best stuff, and then we help you put it on the MLS. We create social media posts around it for you, and we create your open house flyer,
Oh,
right?
wow.
This service,
That's
right? If you, I
crazy.
mean, you're probably doing the math in your head right now.
Yeah.
This service, and keep in mind, like, I have to buy all my own gear, I have to bring all my own gear, I have to have all my online, services to be able to edit and get in my hard drives and all this stuff. And, cinema camera and a drone and gimbals or whatever, this service could easily cost you $2,000, right?
Easy. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
More
Yeah.
if it's a big property. I'm talking about like a
Right.
normal size 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house, 2-story, 1-story, whatever,
Yeah.
because it typically takes me 2 to 3 hours to do a property, to film it, and then I have to edit it, and that takes me another couple hours, and then I have to create the rest of the designs, right?
Yeah.
And
I
so
think that's why people don't realize it too. They have no
yeah.
idea because they think they just see you on the day of and they just see
Mhm.
you shooting and they
Yeah,
have no idea about the after, right? So yeah,
exactly.
so expensive.
So what we do at our brokerage is we don't charge you up front. We charge you after the deal closes. And if the deal doesn't close, we don't get paid.
Oh, that
Right.
sucks.
And so we do that. Actually, I've had this conversation with your husband because he joined our brokerage. And I told him, look, one of the hardest things is, these brokerages are trying to nickel and dime you. And it's like, do you really want to pay $1,000 or whatever? Some people are going to be like, oh, well, I can get that done for $200. Fine. Do you want to get it done for $200 and then the
And not tell
property
them.
doesn't close and
Yeah.
now you're out $200, right?
Yeah.
So whatever the amount is, nobody just wants to throw their money away. And so we realized that, right? We're cutting the cost everywhere for our brokers, for our agents. And yeah, we're taking a little bit more on the back end, but it's no more than most brokerages take, right? We do an 80-20 split flat, no matter what. But we will upfront we upfront a lot of our systems for everybody at no cost at all. And this is another one where we'll go and do all this work for you. And then when you're done, if the property does close, it only costs $600.
Oh,
That's it.
wow.
No matter the size of the property, no matter how much time it took, it costs $600. And that's going to come straight out of escrow. So you don't even really feel it, right?
You don't miss
Because you're just like, well, I just got my check. They got their check and it's fine, right? It's nothing. And so, like, there's a lot that we're doing. And so, but the listing, right? There's a lot that goes into that. And this is where you and I were talking. I was like, hey, like, look, we're expanding. I think at some point, if you're interested, I think that you should consider doing this. But doing a portrait is a little bit different than doing, what we're doing. And after everything we just listed, right? You're doing interiors and exteriors. So that's two different color schemes that are coming through. And then even on the interior, depending on how the house is lit and the different, I was explaining this to the girl that I was mentoring, and I was like, look at these lights. Like, that light over there is yellow and this light is white. And
Mhm.
it doesn't, you don't really think about this when you're in your house, but they're going to shoot vastly different. Right. And
Yep.
so, and then all the other stuff you're doing. So I think you have like that, no matter what you do, right? If you come into this industry, just pick up a camera and learn how to do photography, because you have the basis. And now, like, okay, I'm going to be outside. I'll figure out a way to fix that inside. And again, you can do most of this with your phone and a gimbal, right?
Right. Yeah.
For yourself. So if you don't want to spend any money at all, that's fine. Don't spend it, do it yourself. But now, this is what we try to explain to people. When you're brand new, you should do everything yourself. So then you'll have a little bit of quality control.
Yeah. Yeah. Valued in your tool belt and everything.
Yeah. And you'll know how to do it. And then if you need to do it on yourself, you can, right? But keep in mind that, let's just say the average property in Sacramento, I think right now is $600,000. And the average, and keep in mind, there's no true average, but typically you get 2.5%. That's very typical of that. So you figure, if you're selling a $600,000 home, then that's about $15,000, right? Wouldn't you rather spend that 6 hours finding another $15,000 deal than doing this? And this is where you have to start, like, understanding what you're doing. You have to understand what your time is worth and how the different tasks that you're doing are worth different amounts. And I know that because I do so much for our brokerage. I know that if I'm working on a video, that hourly rate for me is different than if I'm working on something organizational, or if I'm developing the website or whatever it is, right? And it's not like I charge differently. I just know how do I prioritize my time, right?
100%. Yeah.
Exactly. So I know I'm really like bogarting this podcast right now, but it's such an interesting thing, right? So you start out with the portraits. If you have listings, then you have these, you do this series of photos in there. And then they're really kind of the other big component of being in the industry is marketing, right? So marketing yourself, brand development, things like that. And that's a kind of a similar thing I think that you'd be able to offer, right? A series of videos that they can put on their social media, series of photos that they can put out for their marketing. Is that right?
That's huge. I think, and I've talked about this before in the last podcast, just, if you didn't hear that one, basically you are not just selling a service, you're selling yourself, basically, especially if you're new, old, whatever, at any point in your, career as an agent, you really want to keep people involved, invested, and they want to feel like they know you. And the best way to do that, especially with majority of people being visual, is to show them who you are, whether you have social media or not. Maybe that's on your flyers. I'm going to look at a business card and I'm going to get two, and somebody's face is on one and someone's face isn't on the other because they were just being fast or didn't have the money or whatever it is. I'm going to remember the person whose face is there for whatever reason, the features of whatever. So again, I can provide content for you. I can provide the source of those images, because I will tell you, as someone who's married to an agent, he's constantly like, what should I post to my social media? And I tell him every single time, we need to do content for you. Right. So we need things to put out there. You need to be relatable to the community. Let's go out to these places that you're we're here in Sac, right? So let's go out to the main staples of Sac. And when we do go out with our family, we need to make sure that I have my camera so that we can capture you at those places. So people go, oh, he's not just trying to sell from here. You know, he is from here. He cares about the city. So yeah, that is so important.
Yeah. And it can, I advocate learning to do everything yourself. I mean, that's just the type of person I am. And it's mostly because I like building organizations. That's kind of where my passion lies. And because of that, you have to know how to do a lot of things. But that's not what everybody wants to do. And so I do say, hey guys, if you're gonna get into the industry or any industry that comes around your own brand, spend some time looking into what's an affordable way to get content photos for yourself that are good quality. And the biggest thing, and I put on workshops and seminars for brand development as a whole. And so I'm actually launching my website pretty soon, and it'll have like an opportunity to kind of see some of that stuff that you can sign up for. But it can be really daunting, right? Because there's a lot of aspects that go into this, and people don't know how to build correct consistency. And there's over editing and under editing on stuff. It's just, there's a lot that goes into it. So, the first thing you can really do is just say, okay, I don't know any of that.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I'm just going to get stuff out because it has to get out. And then as you make money and as you have time, then you can start to invest in those guiding, principles or people or YouTube videos, whatever it is, right? And invest in people like myself and Melissa who can take high-end stuff for you. So then you can start to give yourself back more time to find deals in the community, right? And help the community and get people into houses.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just refine as you go. We didn't build our arsenal of camera gear in one day, right? It took us a long time. Take what you have, do what you can, and then as you become more successful, just refine what you have and make it better.
Exactly. So before we get off the podcast, we've talked a lot about using kind of low end gear, right? So your iPhone, these gimbals or whatever. But if you do want to get into higher gear and for some reason you have a ton of money sitting around and you're like, you know what? And this is oddly enough, this is kind of how I am. I just won't buy things until I can buy the best version of it.
Yeah.
And maybe that means a good example is I have a long range rifle that I shoot with for competition shooting. And it took me 10 years to decide what I wanted to buy, to be able to have enough money to buy it and to buy it in such a way to where I wasn't hindering my life, right? I'm not putting it on a credit card.
Right.
I'm not taking away from my savings, right? It had to be extra money. So, that's an extreme example, but even with my cameras, right? It's, maybe I want to buy that new cinema camera that's $6,000. I'm not going to spend $6,000 right now, but maybe I'll say, you know what, I'll save for the next 2-3 years. I'll save $2,000 a year, and then I'll have the money then. And by that time, a brand new camera will have come out that'll be around the same price, and I'll get the new one. Yeah, I'll get the new one. Yeah. So you're right. It doesn't have to be all bought at once, but if you do want to spend money, I would recommend doing a lot of research. It depends on the brand you're going to go with. Like I run mostly cameras that will do, they're in the middle. So they're good at taking photos and they're good at doing video, but they're not great at both because of the nature of what I do. But if you're mostly going to do photography for yourself or, of other things, then get a nicer camera that is photography based or invest in a cinema camera. And then again, this is if you have the money, because I think the lowest end cinema camera for Sony is $3,500, right? And the body is the same as like the A7 IIs or whatever, A7 IIIs. They're very similar. It's a little more robust, but it's it's a lot of money. So you don't want to have to go buy a $2,000 photography camera and then a $5,000 or $3,000 cinema camera if you're not going to do the high end version of both of those. But like for me, now that I'm doing stationary, like this camera that I have is not moving. Now I have a high-end cinema camera for this, right? And so just kind of gauge that for yourself. And then the big thing for me is you need to remember that buying the camera means buying the body. That's it. Like that's what they mean when you're buying the camera. So you still have to buy lenses. You still typically have to buy rigs, so cages that you put them in, so you can put additional stuff on there. If you do stuff for a long day, people put battery packs on them. They put filters on them, all sorts of stuff. And then you forget about the little like cords you have to buy that add for some reason add up to a ton of money over the year. And then you know, the higher end memory cards, and then you don't keep stuff on the memory card, you need to put it onto a hard drive. So there's a lot of
have to have big storage. Like
yeah, exactly. I just got a brand new computer and I got a terabyte on it because every laptop I buy that's 500 gigabytes, it runs out, and then I have to clear everything off, put it on a hard drive. It's a pain. So yeah, a lot goes into that. And then kind of remember that there's a lot of directions that you can go with learning the skill set, right? You can build your own brand. You can take your photos, you can do your videos, you can start a podcast, you know, you can do all of these things that are interesting. And then, you know, better than nothing, you can actually promote yourself, because that's the hardest thing for the first year. Nobody knows who you are. Nobody trusts you. You're brand new to this industry. So it behooves you to take 10,000 photos and put 2,000 of them online. So you have some, so at least people see that you're investing in yourself in this industry.
Putting yourself out there, right?
Yeah.
At least.
Exactly. Yeah. So we are towards the end of the podcast. I appreciate you being on. We could have probably did this podcast for about 3 hours. I love talking about like the technology and all the stuff that I have with, you know, this that I've built up over time. And so, and I actually remember I put some videos up one time about on Instagram about like, okay, I'm going to be running this live stream system. Look at how I have to connect 12 things for this to work correctly, right?
Yeah. So you have done that stream before, or you're planning on it?
No, I have done live streams before. And it's because you have to, you know, you have to get all the hardware set up, but then you have to run it through like a system that runs through another system that captures, and then you have to assign every camera. And like it's gotten a little bit easier now. I have the A10 Mini Pro, so it's a switcher, but I used to use oh God, what's it called? OBM, or the software version of that. And but yeah, it's just I could talk on this for a really long time, but mostly what I want to do is I wanted to get you on to kind of get your insight, your input, and kind of like, especially like that portrait one, because that's one of the first things people should be doing. And then just kind of let people know, like, don't be intimidated with this. You just need to put stuff out. Most people don't care. They're very consumed with their own lives. Most people do not care what you're doing. And we want people to care. So let's put stuff out. Let's be consistent. Use your phone. Make sure it looks good, but use your phone and go out and do stuff. And I want to do another podcast at some point that's a little more in depth, right? That's maybe a little like not quite a webinar or seminar, but it's kind of like right there where we're like, hey, this is, if you were going to map out a week, this is what it would look like, right?
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So, because these conversations go really long, just trying to convince people that they should just do it in general.
Put content out there. Put content out there.
Exactly.
Keep yourself visible in people's feed. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Just make sure you're there. So do it.
Yeah. And it's, I get that it's not easy, right? Like life.
That's why I'm behind the camera. I don't like being in front of the camera.
Life happens. Even with like the podcast, you'll notice that I haven't put much up on the webpage. Now that's because I'm designing a few things on the back end that'll help me later. But I get it, right? Consistency is really hard, but you guys can do it. So again, thank you for being on. Definitely, I'm gonna put your stuff in our description. If you guys need portraits or you need any sort of photography stuff, reach out to Melissa. She can give you guys, you know, some insight into kind of what the cost should look like, and you know, maybe all of that sort of stuff. And I don't know if you have, do you have a business page or a
I
business
do have a
Instagram?
business Instagram. Yeah, it's Melissa Wyer Photography.
Okay,
So
perfect.
I'll send
Well,
that all to you
yeah,
and you can
send
find
that
it.
to me as well. But yeah, if you guys are interested in that, reach out and just, be bold this year and start getting your stuff up. So
Do
thank
it.
you guys. Yep. Thank you guys so much for being on. Again, this is the Hard Money Show where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
All right. And this one.